Okay, welcome to a tutorial on the Serge Modular synthesizer. This is going to be my first tutorial, so any feedback would be greatly appreciated. I'm doing this tutorial at the Serge Modular Synth at Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. It's in the SURST, or the Studio for Research in Sound and Technology. Doing this tutorial mainly for the people in this space, but also for YouTube and for myself and a few friends that I've met that would like to get into the Serge Modular. So in this tutorial I'm going to be going over oscillators, mainly just the new Timbral oscillator, which is the one of the main oscillators on the Serge. Yeah, so I think even for people just wanting to get into modular synthesis, that the Serge is a sort of good entry point, mainly because it's really about the synthesis and not much more than that, and it's about like feedback patching. So once you sort of understand the way audio synthesis works and modular synthesis works, it's really fun to just patch and play around and get interesting results that way. So yeah, let's get started on this. Hopefully this tutorial tracks well and the mic sounds well and all of that, but I guess we'll find out. So the new Timbral oscillator is an oscillator, and if you don't know what an oscillator is, it's basically a waveform of voltage that cycles up and down at a really fast rate, and then you can hear it. I also have the oscilloscope here, so you can see what these different waveforms sound like, and we'll see that as I patch. But I guess just going over a breakdown of the module. So there's your oscillator outputs. These are the different waveforms that you can get out of the oscillator. It's a sawtooth, and we could just go through these now. Well, I'll just go over the whole module. Sawtooth, triangle, sine wave, variable wave output, and a pulse wave. The variable wave output means that you can kind of interpolate through these waveforms with a saw to a sine to a pulse, and then you have control over the pulse width over here. So it cycles through all of those waveforms, and we'll see that in a second on the oscilloscope. You have 2 volt per octave inputs. Volt per octave means that it tracks 1 voltage that it's getting per octave of a note, converts it to hertz in frequency, and that's useful for sending pitch information from, let's say, your DAW or some other sequencer that has notes that you're playing out of it. So there are control voltage inputs, CV inputs, which mean that you can control sort of any of these parameters with control voltage from other modules or sequencers, envelope generators, etc., kind of whatever you want. So on here there are, so I guess the 1 volt per octave inputs are control voltage, but there is a dedicated control voltage input for frequency over here, and then this is called an attenuverter. So usually when that line comes from one of these jacks, it's saying whatever voltage I put in here, I want it to affect the frequency in a positive way. So let's say if I put a positive voltage in there, this controls the amount that positive voltage is affecting the frequency. And if I put a positive voltage in there, this will control how much it's affecting the frequency in a negative way. So it'll bring the frequency down towards that direction. So that's why it's an attenuator, but also an inverter. So it's an attenuverter. So clockwise, you're adding, not adding, but you're adding voltage to the frequency. Counterclockwise, it's the opposite. So then there's an FM input, which is frequency modulation. All of these can be FM inputs because technically we're modulating the frequency these are changing the frequency, this is changing frequency. But this linear FM input is for audio rate frequency specifically. You can sort of use any of these inputs for that, but this is dedicated for that for some reasons. So you can use another oscillator to control this oscillator's frequency with this black input over here. Then you have a control over how much that other oscillator is affecting it. And this is just an attenuator. This doesn't invert, so it doesn't have these symbols you see on the side here that show that it's an attenuverter. So if I put in another oscillator here, this is controlling how much I want that signal to affect it. And if I put in a control voltage here, this basically controls this knob. So it's like how much of the FM of the other oscillator you want to control the frequency of this oscillator. And we'll get into FM in a second, maybe in this video, maybe in another video. But that's a really cool way to sort of control the frequency modulation that you want to happen. Yeah, gives you more control over the frequency, over how much of the frequency modulation you're using in a linear way. And then there are jacks for portamento, which I probably won't get into this video because I don't use it too much. So these two jacks, I don't really use portamento. Then there's, of course, your coarse frequency of the oscillator. This is the base frequency for it, and then a fine tune if you want to tune it to a certain note or use a tuner, etc. So yeah, and then I guess we can get into sort of what the waveforms look like. So I'm going to adjust my other camera over here. So I'm going to take a sine wave from this oscillator and place it into my jumbler over here, which just is a format converter. Because Serge runs with banana cables. These are banana cables. These are banana jacks. And Eurorack, which is another format, maybe more familiar with, runs with 1/8" cables. And the main difference is that Serge does not carry ground. So if you plug something in wrong, it won't blow up any modules, which is also a good thing for educational purposes. And also, yeah, so Eurorack cables carry ground and signal. Serge only carries ground, or Serge only carries signal, which is why we have ground jacks connecting the different Serge units over here. But here, transfer this to here. And adjust the time on here just so you can see what a sine wave looks like. I'm going to adjust my fine frequency here just to put it in tune for you to just look at it. So that's a sine wave. And then we have to hear it, obviously. So another nice thing about Serge is that you can stack them very easily with these banana cables. And it just has a nice tactile feel to it. And I'm going to put it into my mixer over here, which is off screen, but you can get into the mixer later, but it's just a mixer with 2 inputs, 2 aux inputs, and 2 outputs, and 2 banana jack outputs, and then CV over gain and CV over pan. So I'm just going to bring this up, and you'll probably be able to hear that. So that's what our sine wave looks like. You take it out of sine, put it into triangle. That's what a triangle wave looks like. Triangle wave is positive, so these white jacks are most likely going to be unipolar, which means that they're only going in the positive voltage range, versus the sine wave, which is bipolar. And this usually doesn't matter in terms of audio. It sort of matters in FM, and if you're using it to modulate another thing, but for the sake of this tutorial, you won't need to know that. This is what a saw wave looks like, and then these kind of go up in harmonics. So like the sine wave has less harmonics. It's like the fundamental tone. Triangle has a little more harmonics. Saw wave has a lot of harmonics. It's a bright sound, which is good for subtractive synthesis, subtracting away from that sound. You get cool sounds. You get like acid sounds with filters doing that way. Then variable's also super fun because you can just change it dynamically and it sounds crazy. It's the saw wave. can already tell it's super bright, has a lot more dynamics than the sine wave over here. And then your variable, and then I'm going to sweep this. So you can see that's sweepable, and then this knob over here, it has these brackets on the outside, so you know it's an attenuverter. So this is a good example of taking something else like I'm just going to take a looping envelope from one of the dual slope generators over here, just to give you an example of how the attenuverters work and how the variable sounds like. So it's going in, nothing's changing because we are not opening up this attenuverter. So if I open it up clockwise, the envelope's affecting a little bit. And I can show you the envelope on the oscilloscope as well with another channel. So now the blue trace on my oscilloscope is the control voltage that we're using to control the variable waveform. If I open this up more, you see it's affecting it more. If I open it the other way, now it's going that way. And that all depends on the starting point of here. So if this is all the way over here, then I can... Now I'm sweeping through the entire range of the variable waveforms. Okay, starting at the beginning and letting the voltage control the whole thing. If I go the opposite way, nothing happens because it doesn't have anywhere to move. So that's how attenuverters work. I can show you the same thing with pitch. So now it's doing it a little bit because these knobs are pretty sensitive, but ideally it shouldn't at the middle. And now it's going up, and now it's going down. And it can go pretty drastically far. So now that's the entire range of the oscillator basically. So that's an example of how you can use that. Yeah, and then I guess we can use the sequencer to control the volt per octave input. That will probably make more sense when I go over the sequencer. So that's kind of it for this module for now. Those are the sounds you can get out of the module. And you can do feedback sometimes. In some cases, I guess we can go over feedback, just like an experiment.